how to stop being self-conscious?
I think there's a handful of things that come with this that's always a little bit tricky. One of the easiest ways to not be self-conscious is to not think about self. Maybe seems obvious, but is very often missed. It is not uncommon for us to operate from a very egoic structure in the world. And so our eyes are egoically on us, and that could be in the form of either egoic self-love or self-prioritization, self-preservation, to self-loathing. In any case, it's still about you. And sometimes we can feel that in somebody's energy, where whether they're hating on themselves, depressed about themselves, or loving themselves and kind of manic in that expression, it's still about them. Their eyes are still on them. My experience has been when we shift from caring about ourselves in that way to focused on being in service to others, we very often lose that self-consciousness. When our eyes are on service and being of value to others and adding value to others and being a producer in the world, it isn't uncommon for a lot of the self-consciousness to shift with us simply because we're not spending time focused on us, but on in service of others. Now, I wish I could say that's a foolproof plan, but there are layers to this that will just help kill, if you will, or diminish the egoic concentration on oneself. Beyond that, confidence is a great equalizer. So building your confidence in yourself can go a long ways toward making you less self-conscious. A couple of things you can do to that is learn by getting little wins and building on those wins and then recording them. Begin to remember the things that you've done well. Begin to recall where you've been effective and the little successes you've had. Also, if you are stuck in a pattern of self-consciousness, you may want to potentially hire a coach or a therapist to help you kind of navigate, well, when did I start to first feel this way? Can I remember the first time I was self-conscious about the way I looked or the way I spoke or the way I dressed? Very often there is a wound from somebody that we cared about or loved or still do, whether it be a parent or a sibling or a partner, a husband, a wife. Somewhere along the way, it is the potential that we picked up wounds related to our experiences with other that we have not healed from is what's keeping us in that loop, and simply getting whole in that area, forgiving that person, letting go, understanding where they were coming from, and realizing that we don't need to take what others do personally can go a long ways towards healing that self-consciousness. So there's a handful of things depending on where you are in that journey.
Someone is asking, how do you get over burnout and what causes burnout?
Burnout can happen for a handful of reasons, but the most common is poor recovery protocols. Especially when we are younger, we tend to think our bodies can handle more than they can because they do respond, they're pretty resilient. But like any machine, if you don't constantly maintain it, repair it, take care of it, it eventually starts to wear down and you won't get the same yield or the same result from the same effort. That's kind of one of the reasons you know you're burning out. That may mean because you have poor recovery protocols, meaning you're exerting yourself in an endeavor or an activity or at work, but you're not giving yourself time for appropriate sleep, nutrition, time to rest, to reflect, do things that help you assimilate all of that energy and effort you put into the task. So that is one form of burnout. Another form of burnout is doing the same repetitious activity over and over and over again, and in a way that you just start to feel numb. And that's usually because you are disconnected from the work you're doing and its purpose. So you basically feel like a cog in a system, and there is no vision or purpose or clarity behind what you're doing. That usually breaks the human spirit pretty quickly. Those kinds of jobs generally are transient jobs where you pick them up to pay bills, but you're not going to stay in them. But that's another form of burnout. There's also burnout that comes from being in a plateau, which doesn't get talked about enough, and this is usually where people will stop working out in the gym, is when they get into these plateaus where they go and they feel like they're putting in the same amount of effort, but their body's not changing anymore, they're not getting any stronger, and they get kind of negged out because they're addicted to result and they're not getting it. In that case, it's probably time to change up something in the routine to shock the body back into growth. But that principle can be applied to any area of your life where you may be getting burned out because you're not growing. Remember, happy people are growing people. And so the first thing I'm looking at is, do you have clarity and vision around what you're doing? Do you have appropriate recovery protocols that help you heal from the work you're doing? And third, are you growing? Happy people are growing people. So I would be looking at those three things and then taking the necessary action to either grow, recover, or make sure that you're enduring through the process.
How to break free from codependency and flow into healthy self-love.
How to get out of codependence. This is a big one. When we move from dependence to codependence, we're moving away from independence. And so learning how to become whole and healthy on our own is important. This is a fundamental principle in relationship. Two broken people don't make a whole relationship. And so it starts with learning how to love yourself and create healthy boundaries for yourself. Now, we always do what we value most. This is a challenging statement for some people who don't like to think about that, but it's true. In any given moment, we're always doing what we think is most beneficial to us in that moment. So if you find yourself moving back into codependent relationships or having a hard time getting out of one, what you want to ask yourself is, what am I valuing most? What am I prioritizing here? And my guess is there is an emotional need that is being met from the codependent relationship that is so important to you that you're willing to sacrifice most other things in order for it to get met. That's where I would start. Heal the wound that is related to the overcompensation in that area of your life, and you will likely find yourself getting freer and not having the deep desire to move back into unhealthy relationship constructs simply to get that need met. Now, we have to learn how to move from dependence, which is normally our childhood, into independence. Independence is how we move into interdependence, which allows for healthy communities, healthy families, healthy states, healthy governments. Codependence, the opposite of that. It keeps us stuck, keeps us broken, and we keep going around the same mountain, which is why so many people don't change until the pain of staying the same is so great that they're like, enough is enough. And so I would invite you to not have to get to that point where the pain is so overwhelming that you have no other choice by working on yourself. When you do that, you have to understand your personal growth and development may mean that the people in your life change. Some people will grow with you, some people will grow apart. Accept that as part of your journey. The greatest gift you can give the world is your own personal development and growth, which starts with learning how to love and accept yourself exactly where you're at while moving forward into a better world. I hope that helps.
How to discover your authentic self.
How to discover your authentic self? This is a great question. My first book is on this topic. It's really, for me, it's closing the gap, or what I call the identity gap, between the real and the ideal self. A lot of this is done in experience, just beginning to know yourself more by creating space for you to think on and contemplate who you really are. A lot of the early work in discovering ourselves, I guess we could say, is in removing what we know we definitely are not. So a lot of it is subtraction in the beginning, where we just begin to go, I'm not that, or I don't believe that, or I don't enjoy that. And then sometimes inviting yourself into understanding, well, why don't I value that? Why isn't that important to me? Why, and just general curiosity, is a really powerful tool in growing and learning as an individual and really beginning to understand who you are. The other thing you can do, and I would encourage you to do, is to put yourself in lots of different situations. Open up your worldview by traveling and challenging yourself and doing things that maybe on the surface seem uncomfortable. We generally, as humans, grow through discomfort more than comfort. And so challenging yourself by doing things that maybe you thought you couldn't, or maybe you're a little bit afraid to do, or will challenge you in some way, you'll learn more about yourself and who you really are by doing that than not doing anything or just keeping yourself in your comfort zone. So those are all things that I would do. I'd also pay attention to feedback you get from others. What are ways that people consistently describe you, and see what correlations come up or what consistencies come up in that. But to me, the part of the journey of being on this rock is the discovery of self. And I would offer probably more in remembering who you are than creating who you are, though I think there is an element of creation in our physical expression for sure.
How to bounce back from loss.
It's tough to know what kind of loss we're talking about, so I'll speak in general principles here, whether it's a loss of a family member or a loss of a business or a loss in a sporting event. Principally, there's overlap, so I'll address the overlap because I don't know the exact specifics here. It's mostly in how you frame things. Failure or mistakes or losses are part of the process of success. You will fail your way to success. It's just about learning from it. Especially early in life, we can get stuck in this. Especially if you're in your 20s or really even your 30s, maybe even to your mid 40s, you're still probably 5 mistakes high. You can make lots of mistakes and lose lots of times, and you're still going to be okay. Just learn from the losses. And 5 mistakes high is a reference to flying. When you're getting your pilot's license, the training pilot will take you up high enough where if you made a mistake, you could recover 5 times, right? As a general rule, so that you're not making a mistake that could wreck the plane and obviously compromise life or create danger there. So staying as high as possible. That's most of us for a good portion of our life. Most anything is recoverable from. It's mostly just your perspective and your frame. So I'd look at, what is your story about a thing? Whatever that loss is, how are you looking at it? Are you looking at it as a lesson, or are you looking at it as this insurmountable thing you're never going to be able to get over? I have lost many, many times in my life, and I would be lying if I said there weren't times when I was like, oh my God, how am I ever going to recover from this? Or like, this is devastating. And then within a short amount of time, meaning 6 months to a year, maybe a couple of years, it's in the past. It's no longer a big part of my frame or how I look at my life. And in many cases, I forget about these things until somebody asks me to talk about my failures or what I've learned from them. And so that's it. And you've done the work when things that you thought were going to stop you or hold you back, you end up becoming incredibly grateful for the lessons you learned. And that's generally it. Even the hardest things we go through can prepare us for the next level of our life if we receive them as a lesson. And that's a consciousness shift from life is happening to me, which 85% of the world hangs out in, this idea that I'm not in control, I'm at the effects of life, I'm a victim of life, God hates me, the universe hates me, whatever your story is, to life is happening for me. So we shift from life is happening to me to life is happening for me. For me, consciousness is, what can I learn from this? What is my opportunity moving forward based on this information? And so I think failure isn't final. You just have to make sure that you're learning and growing from it. And all losses you can recover from one way or the other.